500 corporations to family-owned small businesses. It's a great organization. And again, for those of you, given that this is a public forum, may not know as much from NHA, I do encourage you to visit the site and spend a little bit of time. There's a lot of information and, of course, a lot of great people that represent this industry. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about the highlights. Some of you, of course, may be members of WIC, as I will refer to it moving forward, our council. Some of you may not know WIC, but maybe in another committee. Some of you may not really know much about WIC. So I just wanted to highlight a few accomplishments that I think are notable and all really within the spirit and intent of providing a better service to all of our members. One of the things that we started out this earlier in 2020 is a discussion board. Innovation should always be included, in my mind, with a place where people can share ideas, ask questions, and answer some of those questions amongst the network of people. So that's a place that we believe is critical to not only support innovation, but at the same time encourage it. And that's something that if you're not aware of, I encourage you to visit, and we'll talk more about that near the end of the presentation. Over the summer, we worked very closely, not only with NHA, to respond on behalf of all of you to the DOE's several requests for information. These requests for information are incredibly important, and you'll hear from a few of my DOE colleagues on the importance of those documents, how they are used to not only drive their portfolio, but other requirements that the agency may have. We continue to try to keep everybody informed through periodic sessions that DOE administers, where information is shared with all of you of an R&D priority or activity in a national lab or another entity. Many folks still today may struggle a little bit in really understanding the breadth and depth of the DOE portfolio, and this is our approach to try to make all of you aware of those activities. And they're very robust and again, done by a lot of great scientists across the United States. We also participated in an effort called the Uncommon Dialogue, which really brought together members from different industries, some that naturally work together, some that don't, to really put a new set of activities that the hydropower industry can agree to work on. And the WIC led that technology chapter. And in just a few moments, you'll hear by one of the things that we're probably the most proud of, which is the release of our Waterpower Research Portal, referred to as WARP. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I personally am really excited about this effort. The fact that NHA has shared that effort in the public network, and you do not have to be a member of NHA to use that. And of course, I'll talk a little bit more about it for those of you that it may still be a bit abstract. Next slide, please. But before I continue, I at least want to introduce the new leadership for WIC for 2021. If I can ask Megan, Bo, and Lucci, who is not new, of course, but to turn on their camera. So Megan Nesbitt on the screen to some of you, maybe in different locations from GE Renewable Energy. Megan has been working in hydropower for quite some time, and I'm incredibly excited to have her lead this committee moving forward. 15 years of hydropower experience. She's a senior account manager and service director at GE Renewables, covering the entire southeast of the United States. She started her career in the UK while working on her master's at Edinburgh, and then went to Voith, and then some of you may also know her from the great work that she did leading the R&D program at Edward. So I've had the opportunity to not only work in the last few weeks with Megan in this new capacity, but work with her in the past, and she's just going to be phenomenal for the position. So welcome, Megan. We're excited to have you.
Thank you, Jose. I'm very excited.
Next is Bo Hajidwa from Mesa Associates. He'll be serving as the WIC Vice Chair. Similar to Megan, I've had a great history working with Bo for many years while at the National Laboratories. But in his current role, he's the Director of the Integrated Water Resource Management at Mesa Associates and has over 36 years of experience. His bio is very extensive, but I'll just highlight a few key projects or products that you all may use that has Bo's fingerprint on. He has served as the principal investigator for several national and regional landmark projects and studies, including TVA's River Operations Study, NHA's Asset Management, the National Assessment of Powering of Non-Power Dams, and Nearstream Reach Development. Bo has not only been a contributor to this industry, but has over 165 technical publications to his resume. So Bo, we're excited, excuse me, to work with you. And thank you again for volunteering to be working with Megan on WIC for 2021. You're muted, Bo, but that's okay. Last but not for sure least, I need to highlight, and she will continue. We were fortunate, Steve and I, and I'll talk about Steve in a second, about Luci Ciacci, who is the NHA staff liaison for WIC and many other of the councils. Luci has been our glue to all of our efforts in 2020, and just an amazing person to work with. So really excited to have had the opportunity to work with her in this capacity, and she'll continue to do just great stuff working with Megan and Bo. So Luci, as always, thank you for all the hard work that you do as well. And I am not sure, because we actually have quite a bit of folks on the call. I'm not sure if Steve is on the call. I do not see him, but he may show up. Steve was my my vice chair in 2020 with Avista. Steve was incredibly passionate about WIC and was a key pioneer to the WARP effort. So again, Steve is, when he comes in, we'll give him a big applause, because he's just been a great champion and so incredible to work with. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about WARP before I turn it over to Luci, where she'll be doing a live demo for all of you. WARP has had many names. It has had quite a bit of history. It's been an idea in folks' mind, particularly Steve Winke and Sarah Kolba, who were critical for this effort as well. And I really want to acknowledge them. And the intent was really to provide a repository where research activities and connectivity could reside. And this is incredibly hard to do, right? If you're a company that you really want to share all of the research things that you may be doing. If you're the DOE, it's daunting, the hundreds and hundreds of projects that they have, as well as the many other agencies, academia. But the intent really still prevailed, which was to really encourage folks to spend a little bit of time capturing the research that they do in many critical criteria, to provide a living database for the hydropower and marine hydrokinetic industry, spanning technology, environmental, and other types of key parameters that you all may care about. In my time at DOE, this was one of the hardest things that we struggle to do all the time, is how do we create awareness? How do we create connectivity? And I think if we would have had this back then, coupled with the efforts that we did at DOE, we would have been a lot more successful in ensuring that folks really were aware of all the activities that are going on across really many facets and many performers. This living database, as I said in the beginning, will be open to all. It will be in the NHA parent domain of the website, so you do not have to be a WIC member or an NHA member to get access to this. It's fully open source, as stated. It's quite comprehensive for what we're calling our version 1.0. It has representation from industry, the agencies, academia, the trades, the labs, and many more, with over 240 active projects residing in the database, as you see. And in the various topics that you see there before, many topics that you, of course, may be a part of, from conventional hydro, MHK, pump storage, small hydro, and physical and cybersecurity. The goal was always to make it user-friendly, an easy place to navigate and find out a topic that you may be interested, a performer, or a particular author for that matter. And in just moments, Luci will do a live demo. The logos that you see throughout the page are not the exhaustive logos. I just really want to personally thank those entities, because they really went above and beyond in contributing to WARP. And I look forward to seeing WARP grow even more. Now, in closing, before I turn over to Luci, I want to remind everybody that WARP is only as good as we allow it to be good. It's the industry's database. We need all of you to help us keep it fresh, keep it going, keep it relevant, keep it updated, etc. We try to make it as user-friendly. We're thankful to NHA for supporting WIC on this effort and allocating resources, both in people and in dollars, to get this done. But now it's our turn as an industry to make sure that it lives and it continues to provide the service for all. So again, I am personally really excited about this. We couldn't have done it without Steve and Sarah and so many people that contributed a lot. Leroy, folks from NHA. But again, I'll pause here and turn it over to Lucci so she can give you a demo of work. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jose. Let's start the demo. As Jose mentioned, this is an open to all initiative for NHA. It will be on it is on the public-facing side of the site, and it is not just an NHA member benefit. So go over to resources, hover over resources, click on Water Research Portal. Here we are. We provide a little bit of information about the portal and instructions, and also feature research. So we will change this monthly. This provides just a little bit of information on one project that we have within the portal. If you're interested in featuring your research within this area, please let me know, and we can work together in just gathering a little bit more information and posting it up on the site. Okay. As Jose mentioned, we have over 240 projects within the portal. About 75% of them focus on conventional and 15% on marine energy. And our number one goal for 2021 will be to build the research within the site. We really need the research community, industry to work with us on that. So I think that we can get started. As you can see, there are 3 levels to the data structure. There's the technology applications. You can further refine with research categories and refine again through research subcategories. So, for example, click on conventional hydro, and you'll have a list of all of the conventional hydro projects or research that we have within the portal. Further refine environmental and sustainability, and that will show all conventional environmental and sustainability research we have within the portal. We can refine even more. For example, fish and aquatic resources. Once the information is pulled up from the search that you've entered, you can click on View More. So this provides you with the title of the research, the lead company, lead researcher, an abstract, the technology application, research category, research subcategory, status, and completion date. You can also click on View Link, and that will pull up either the host site or some other link that they've provided that provides further information on the research. Okay. You can also search through keywords. So, for example, search through the lead company. For entering a new search, you'll need to click clear filters. And this will pull up every project. Again, click on View More. View link. Okay. You can also enter in a lead researcher name. You see Sherry Corelli there. And you can search via topic keywords. So, for example, our featured research includes snowpack, and this is the project. Okay. More, and you can click on View Link. You can also submit a project on this portal by either scrolling down to the bottom of the page or clicking on Submit Project. So you'll enter your name, organization, title, address, email, phone number, a link to your research, and any comments you'd like. Once you hit Submit Project, I will receive an email. I will work with Megan and Bo and reach out to the individual that submit for further information. For example, information on the technology application, research category, or research subcategory. So, and of course, if you have any questions on using the site, please feel free to contact me. And we really feel as though this is an opportunity for researchers to amplify the research that they're contributing to. And also it provides insight into what others are doing in the industry. So we hope that you enjoy and really find value in the tool. Again, I'd like to thank the contributors and Jose, Steve, Sarah, and I very much look forward to working with Bo and Megan on this project. Do we have any questions on the tool?
Yeah, Lucy, there is a couple of questions that I'll read out and then we'll open it to the folks. Again, folks, if you have questions, please turn on your camera and we'll do our best to administer those. But Brian from PNL, his question was, do we have plans to add USGS related hydropower research? So I'll take a first crack at that, Brian. Again, it's a portal and we have reached out in at least our first attempt to many of the entities to participate. Of course, not having a product for them to see and other things, some entities declined at that time and so forth. So we'll be pursuing that again. If you have particular folks that you believe that we can work with to have them contribute to the database, we would be excited to do that. So Brian, I hope that answers that question. And Lucci, one of the things that I was going to add to your great presentation is, as individual performers, you may look and find your own research. If for some reason there is an error in the input that was submitted for some, Lucci, how would they go to correct that error and give you that information?
They can email me.
Okay. Excellent. Do folks have any questions or comments on the Warp demo before we move on? Very good.
Hey, Jose, I have just a quick suggestion here. On
Yes.
the research submission, I think we will, on the box message / comments, we might add another box somewhere and ask basically the people who submit the research to kind of suggest some of those classification, technology application, research categories, and then research subcategories. So for example, you load or you upload one of the research, it's better from the specialist or researcher to kind of guide us. What is this conventional marine pump, and then under what research category will be sustainable equipment or so. It will
Yes.
avoid another layer of questioning.
Yeah, that's excuse me, that's a great suggestion and something that we should definitely consider for sure. Thank you, Bo.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
This is Norman Bishop. I believe what you're doing is great. I just want to say that. I wanted to kind of build on what Ryan's question, because obviously there's significant research going on by the Corps of Engineers, Bureau of Reclamation. The list is long. It's not only USGS. What is the, and maybe this is something Bo may want to, what is your vision of trying to reach out to these other research sources and try to bring them into our fold, so to speak?
Yeah. So hi, Norman. Thank you for the compliments on the database. I would say that in the initial data inquiry, we reached out to many folks, and as I said earlier, some folks, couldn't participate for one reason or the other. And I think us having a database out now, they can see the intent of what we were requesting earlier will only facilitate that. For entities such as the one that you alluded to, which volumetrically have a lot of R&D activities, going through the portal and submitting them one by one would be daunting. I would assume, and I'll leave this up to Megan and Bo and of course Lucci, we would do something like we did prior, which was created in essence, a simple Excel database where the performer or performer company would fill out and populate, and then we would upload it on the back end in a streamlined fashion. And that's how the database was created, right? These were not all submitted on one by one. So as I shared earlier, my going in assumption is now that we have an operational database, two things will happen. Number one is researchers who maybe submitted a little bit may see it now and want to submit more. Researchers who maybe were on the fence, hopefully we'll see it, and we'll have to check back with them and convince them, encourage them rather to add more information. And the third thing is all of you. If you guys see a gap in this database that you guys think is important, such as the points that you made and Brian made, steer the WIC team in that direction, either through a POC and other. I think between those three things, that would be a great next step. Vince had a question. The answer is yes. Vince, your question is, can you do R&D activities that have completed? The answer is yes. And in Lucci's demo, you might have seen some of them that there was a category that said ongoing, and another category that the partner category would be completed. So yes, it doesn't have to be just live research. We just ask that the performer completes that particular field to represent that. And with that said, the ideal assumption is that as a performer completes his or her work, they will let the WARP database know that as well, so we can keep it as fresh as possible. Any other questions? Okay. Well, what I will say in closing, because we'll say this probably a half a dozen more times, please help WIC NHA keep this fresh and updated. Imagine your work being used by a university student who's just curious about hydropower, or a fellow researcher who wants to augment his or her R&D and get more references. To some of you that may want to know a little bit more of what a lab is doing in a certain area. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of that. And this will only be, I think it's off to a great start, only be as successful as we want to make it. So again, I really want to applaud NHA for their support to WIC and the many folks who contributed to that. So Luci, with that, I'll leave that back to you.
Great, thank you very much. And next we have Marisol Bonet, speaking to DOE's Hydropower Program Update. Marisol?
Hopefully you can all hear me okay. Thank you, NHA and the Water Innovation Council for the opportunity to come here and speak to you all today. So again, my name is Marisol or Mari Bonnet, and I'm a technology manager with DOE's Waterpower Technologies Office. And the title of the presentation is DOE's Hydropower Program Update, but today is going to be a little bit different from our typical update in that I'm not just going to be going over our portfolio in detail and telling you the latest and greatest of what the program has done. But instead, I wanted to make sure that everyone in the WIC is aware and has a good understanding of all the different mechanisms that are available for you to work with us, whether it's direct funding or working with the national labs. And so I prepared this presentation today to give you a brief overview. It's going to be a lot of information, especially if you're not familiar with DOE, maybe a lot of acronyms, but don't worry because Jose and Luci will share the slides with everyone after the meeting and you can go back to them for reference. Next slide, please. So just quickly before diving into the different mechanisms, for those of you that are not familiar with the Waterpower Technologies Office, in essence, we support research, development, and testing of water power technologies and systems. And so the office is split into two different programs. One is the Marine and Hydrokinetics program, which focuses on wave, tidal, and current energy technologies. And then there's the Hydropower program, which is the one that I work for and the one that I'll be focusing on more on the most today, just because that's my experience. But that one revolves around existing conventional hydropower as well as new low impact hydro development and pump storage systems. Next slide. So briefly, just to give you an idea, here's our budget over time. You can see that it's been steadily increasing since the office was reestablished back in 2008. So thank you, NHA, for your role in that. The blue represents the Marine and Hydrokinetics program. Green is hydro. Usually it's like a 2/3 MHK funding, 1/3 hydro of the total. So every year Congress gives us a budget as part of the appropriations bill. Sometimes the language is super prescriptive, sometimes it's not. So they may tell us exactly how we need to spend a certain amount of money each year. As an example, so this year you see that in FY21 we got $41 million, and out of that they asked us to spend $15 million to support our grid reliability and resilience efforts, $3 million to look at ways that hydro infrastructure can be improved to provide benefits to other water systems like irrigation and municipal water supply, and $5 million for small hydropower technology, for example. Next slide. And so in the Hydropower program, we have these strategic objectives, which are 5 areas of work that are really our approaches to addressing hydro's challenges. And our overall goal is stated at the top here, which is enabling more sustainable, cost-effective, and flexible hydropower and pump storage. And so we aim to achieve this by supporting data access, sharing, and analysis, as well as environmental R&D, and both of these are here at the bottom of the pyramid because they really underpin all of the work that we do. Then we also have research around new technologies for what we call low impact hydro, so hydropower with few or negligible environmental impacts, whether it's at non-powered dams, greenfield sites, or existing conduits. Then we also have on the right tools for modernizing the existing fleet. And then in the middle, both analysis and technology development to enable hydropower and pump storage to best serve grid. So that's our Hydrowires initiative, if you've heard that term. Next slide. And so we have a range of activities to accomplish those strategic objectives, going from foundational research all the way to market adoption. And so I'll quickly walk through these. Again, you're going to have access to the slides, but you'll see that the more advanced that we get in this technology readiness scale, and technology really could be a model, software, widget. It doesn't have to be hardware, but includes hardware. And the more advanced we get in this readiness scale, the more that we need industry to be involved to ensure technology transfer and adoption. And so the first one, research, and Lucy, I think I added some transitions to this, so I think you'll need to click for each of them to pop up. But the first one, research, again, really basic scientific and engineering that underlies specific technology. So this is typically, the type of numerical modeling or experiments that are best suited for a research environment like a national lab or academia. Then we have early development, which is the work that typically happens before a prototype is built. And it involves further testing and analysis. At this stage, we start seeking industry partners, or at least doing some early customer discovery to really identify who our end users will be. And then prototype, pretty simple, but this is when we build an actual functional hardware or software prototype. And at this stage, it's useful, if not necessary, to start attracting potential investors or commercial partners. Pilot demo. So this is the demonstration of the prototype in a realistic environment. Ideally, it should involve some industry partnerships. A commercial demo, this is what's best suited for the private sector, at least with significant private sector investment and participation. So this is someone that will deploy or install a product and continue using it. And then finally, activities for market adoption, so manufacturing and deployment at scale by a commercial entity. So this is very, if not solely, industry focused. And these are all activities to ensure adoption and use by potential end users. Okay, so next I'll get into the actual funding mechanisms. Again, I know this is a super busy slide and a lot of acronyms, but I'm going to walk through each of these 5 mechanisms one by one, but just to give you an idea of how we use different mechanisms to tackle different stages of this technology readiness scale. So first, next slide, please. I'll touch on the first 3, which are our industry-led mechanisms, with the first one being the funding opportunity announcement, which is the most popular one. Hopefully, a lot of you have heard of this. These are our FOAs. And so we use FOAs to competitively select industry or academic awardees. These tend to be multi-million-dollar solicitations with very specific topic areas. These are cooperative agreements, usually, rather than grants, which means that there's a lot of involvement on DOE's side in the project, whether it's directing or dictating even scope. There's usually a cost share requirement, very limited exceptions. Maybe universities can apply for a 10% voucher, but we usually require 20% cost share when it's more commercial demonstrations of 50% cost share. These are longer term projects. And so because these are also bigger dollar amounts and require cost share, the barrier to entry might be a bit higher than some of the other mechanisms that I'll talk about. Next slide, please. So just to give you an example of a FOA, so I mentioned we come up with a topic area. Usually these topic areas we formulate by talking to you all in the industry, in the private sector, learning more about what challenges you're facing, releasing things like requests for information to really dive deep into what the challenges are. And so, for example, back in FY19, we did a FOA focused on modular technologies for low-head applications. So these were technologies, not only turbines, but also fish passage, sediment passage, foundations that balance the performance, the economics, and environmental sustainability. And we also challenged the industry by asking, as a requirement, that they leverage advanced manufacturing techniques to either lower the cost or improve the performance of their technology. And out of that, we had 4 awesome awardees. We had 2 fish passage technologies, 1 generation technology, generation module that also is fish friendly, and University of Minnesota had a modular sediment passage technology. Next slide. So the second one is prices, and prices have been really an effective tool for innovation for a long time, both in the private sector and in the federal government. But our office really has only started using them very recently. I personally really like prices. I think they have a very low barrier to entry. The application is fairly simple and straightforward. We use prices as a way to help us increase our number and diversity of applicants. So even an individual or a university, a student, from all the way to the big companies can apply and put their minds together to tackle a specific problem or challenge. These are also a good way for us to leverage taxpayer funds, because we get a lot of ideas and new innovators into the field, but it's a prize, so we only really pay for success. We've done really big prizes that have multiple stages, and also fairly simple prizes with 1 stage and cash prizes of, say, $15,000. Next slide, please. And I won't touch on these in detail, but just to give you an example of the types of prizes that have come out of the Hydropower program, 1 was focused on finding solutions for fish protection and exclusion. Our FAST prize, which was all about identifying new pump storage designs and technologies that can reduce risk, cost, and timelines. And our I Am Hydro prize, which stands for Innovations in Advanced Manufacturing for Hydro, that one recently closed. And it was all about pushing the industry, both the manufacturing industry to apply their solutions to hydropower, and the hydropower industry to think more broadly about manufacturing and materials, and find ways that we can potentially benefit from advanced manufacturing. This could be, lowering the capital cost or the initial cost, or things like coatings that can lower O&M costs down the line, or even improving performance, like having the ability to have more complex designs that capture more efficiency or whatever that is. And that one recently closed. We had 11 winners, and you can go to our website if you want to see more information on the winners of all these 3 prizes. So the last big one on the industry-led side is the Small Business Innovation Research, or SBIR. This one is a congressionally mandated program. So by law, every federal agency with an R&D budget of 100 million or more has to operate an SBIR program. So we do this every year. This one is closed only to small businesses. So only small businesses that have 500 employees or less can apply. So we typically use SBIR with an eye towards commercializing technologies that are already in the prototype stage. And so it gives small businesses sort of that push to advance their technologies all the way to commercialization. an example, I don't have it in slide form, but we recently had one where we funded 3 small companies with environmentally acceptable lubricants. We gave them the funding, we gave them access to PNNL capabilities for testing, and then, having that relationship, we were able to bring them to conferences, introduce them to the hydro industry. We took them to the CIATI annual conference, for example, and sort of give them that that push and connect them to the hydro industry, as well as the funding that they need to advance and de-risk their technology. So the next 2, these are lab-led. And so these are opportunities that we have to leverage the expertise and the resources at the national labs and give you all access to those capabilities. I'll touch on these really quickly, because then we're going to have a session where you'll actually hear from the national lab folks that we have on the line. But the first one, just really quickly, this is, next slide, please, sir. CRADA, or Cooperative Research and Development Agreement. So this is an agreement between you, the non-federal partner, and the national lab to execute an agreed upon scope. You especially need a CRADA when joint IP is expected to be produced as a result of this collaboration. This could happen in many ways. Sometimes FOAs, in addition to financial assistance, have technical assistance built into it, so you can enter an agreement with the lab that way. Sometimes, relationships are born with the labs out of, conversations at a conference, and you all decide together that, there's potential in evaluating something together, and you enter into the agreement. A lot of times we have lab projects where we ask the labs to find a partner for, say, case studies or validation of a specific technology or model, and so a CRADA may be appropriate in that sense. And so in that case, we would fund the national labs directly to provide assistance to you. There is some cost share requirement, but usually that is met through in-kind contributions. Next slide, please. And then last but not least, this the NOTA, Notice of Opportunity for Technical Assistance. So the NOTA is kind of like a FOA in that it's a competitive process. It's usually a solicitation that comes out with specific topic areas that we want to advance. But instead of providing financial assistance, we only provide technical assistance in the form of access to the national labs or a team of national lab members that's been specifically assembled for that topic area. And I wanted to just bring up a few thoughts on other ways that you can get involved, even if, say you're not looking for funding or technical assistance, but you still want to be involved, or none of the topic areas that we've released recently apply to you. There are other ways that you can be involved with our program. And so the first one, not to sound cheesy, but our door really is always open, our virtual door. And so if you have an idea, or if you've been running into a specific challenge, if there are things that you think DOE should be addressing, you can send us a note, you can set up a meeting with us. We do this all the time, really just meet with stakeholders that want to bring something to our attention. So I can't promise you that, we can't just hand you a check, but we'll try to help out. And at the very least, you'll be informing our portfolio and strategic plan. The second one, especially if you want to know more about our existing work, we do have a webinar series with NHA where we talk about existing work every month. I believe we had one yesterday. We also do our own biannual stakeholder webinars. I think the next one is on March 1st, where we just give an update of our portfolio and activities and priorities. You can also serve as a technical advisor to our many lab projects. So for lab projects over a certain dollar amount, we typically ask the labs to set up advisory groups comprised of stakeholders. And we're always looking for people for those, for experts that want to weigh in on the scope and direction of our projects, provide a review of deliverables, and so on. And then last, but again, definitely not least, we need reviewers all the time. Usually we pay for reviewers as well for your time. Everything that we do is merit reviewed, especially at the selection stage, but we also do reviews of our projects every year or two to measure the progress against the goals. So we need external reviewers for those too. Sometimes, to be frank, we end up reaching out to the same people. We won't let poor Greg Lewis retire in peace, but that's sometimes we need more people because we have a lot of things where we need your input on. Next slide. So before I go, I just wanted to make sure, since I'm talking about funding mechanisms, make sure that I highlight the two open solicitations that we have right now. The first one closes in just a few days, but just to make you aware of it, we have our groundbreaking Hydro prize. So this is a prize where we're looking for new ideas that cut the cost, the timeline, and the risk of developing the geotechnical foundations of a new greenfield project. We have up to $300,000 in cash prizes. The grand prize can win $50,000. And then we also have a NOTA, or Notice of Opportunity for Technical Assistance, open right now. The concept papers are due February 17th, so if you're interested, you still have some time. So again, we're providing hydropower decision makers with national lab expertise and capabilities to address specific challenges that we've identified. So we have a topic area on looking at the implications of joining the EAM or assisting with the decision of whether or not to join an EAM. We have a topic area on better representing hydropower and pump storage in integrated resource planning, a topic area on forecasting and evaluating the value add that new forecasting technologies can have on your system. And we have a topic area on evaluating the financial performance of hydropower plus energy storage hybrid system. And if none of those call out to you, we also have an open topic where you can request any type of lab technical assistance. So if you want to stay in touch with everything that I just said, with our funding opportunities, events, publications, news, we have our Waterwire, which is our newsletter. We used to do it monthly. Now we're doing it more, I think, twice a month. So please go in, use our hyperlink. So once you get the slides, you can click on it and subscribe to our Waterwire to make sure that you stay in touch with everything. And then you can also go to our website, which is listed there. So I think that's it for my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions if we have time. I also have a few questions for you all, if we have time, that I have on the next slide. So Jose and Lucy, I'll let you moderate however you want.
So Marty, thank you so much. Great presentation, and really providing our community here a lot of good information, which is, sometimes difficult to find, how to work with the labs, what are the opportunities, et cetera. So really appreciate that. You taking the time to do it. And I know you have some questions, as you stated, and I think we may have time to do both. We'll still manage the clock, of course, but I want to open the floor, the virtual floor, I guess, to any folks who have questions to DOE, to Madi, on anything she presented. This is a great opportunity for those of you who don't interact that much with DOE, and for those of you that do, it's a great opportunity to maybe ask a question in a different setting. So if you can, please either turn on your mic or turn on your camera. That would be great. And I'll give it a minute here. And if it's a little shy, I have a question, and if not, then we'll let Madi ask her questions.
Well, I have a quick question, if I may. Trey Taylor.
Hi, Trey, please.
Yeah, hi, Jose. just something for everybody to keep in mind and for WPTO to keep in mind, and it kind of stems off of President Biden's executive orders yesterday when he talked about renewable energy development in the United States, job creation, but also he's talking about the exportation of technologies and services from the United States. And just to let everybody know, I'll be serving at the Department of Commerce Renewable Energy Efficiency Advisory Committee about the exportation of renewable energy from the United States. And so one thing I want to put out in the realm of innovation is how quickly water power is changing all over the world, and what an opportunity it is for American companies and innovators to be exporting our services and technologies to particularly developing countries around the world. So I wanted to put that out there as a huge opportunity for us, working with the WPTO and creating these kinds of technology and services for exportation. So I just want to put it out there for everybody to think about in terms of business creation, quite frankly.
Yeah. Thank you, Trey, and congratulations, by the way, on the new assignment. It is a great opportunity. There's going to be many opportunities, I think, under a lot of these renewable energy programs in the coming years, for sure. Any other comments or questions? So Mari, I have a question that you hinted on, and maybe you can expand a little bit. And I know we're going to hear from the laboratories a little bit near the tail end of today's presentation. How many laboratories does your program work with today, as a general statement? And how do you decide which laboratory you go to do this? You don't have to go into the specifics, which ones you go to do what, but how does the decision process go? If I was an industry member and wanted to find out something was, can you walk me a little bit through that?
Yeah, I totally forgot to put a slide with the labs that we work with. That's pretty important. But we typically, at least on the hydro side, the marine side, I think they work with a couple extra. But on the hydro side, we work with 5 labs, which are our Oregon National Lab, Idaho National Lab, the National Renewable Energy Lab, Oak Ridge National Lab, and the Pacific Northwest National Lab. I would say, in WPTO, we have a pretty close relationship. It feels more like we're colleagues rather than, we're the sponsors of their work. Sometimes, if it's smaller scoping projects, we have a list of, or an idea of which labs have capabilities in which space. But for our bigger projects, we do everything competitively through what we call lab calls. And that's why I mentioned reviewers too, because that's part of the merit review process. We may come up with a topic area. Again, we come up with the research topics by getting input directly from you, whether it's one-on-one conversations or requests for informations. And we release a solicitation, sort of like a FOA, but specific to the national labs, to make sure that we get the best quality, the best technical approach for achieving that research. And it goes through an extensive external merit review process.
That's great. Thank you, Maria. One more quick question that others ask often. And you mentioned earlier in your presentation as well, appropriations towards grid-related effort. Of course, grid is not a water thing. It's not a wind thing. It's an all thing. So do you, for us in the water power industry, is the preference that we always go to you? Do we work with the other offices? How are those relationships made?
Yeah, we're trying to do better at that. I don't know if you all have heard of the Energy Storage Challenge, which hydropower and pump storage are both some of the technologies being represented there with other energy storage technologies. But these are ways that we're trying to coordinate our work. For example, valuation of energy storage is not all that different if the energy storage is pump storage or it's the battery. The methodology and approach is going to be very similar, and it's important that, especially for taxpayers, but also to maximize our efforts and impact, that we are coordinated in that. And so we've started building better relationships with the Office of Electricity, with other renewable offices. Now We also started, we're putting together a report that's going to be released really soon, but in the hybrid space, for example, where, you know, a hybrid system, we're hearing a lot about this, but a hybrid system by definition includes at least 2 technologies, but our research so far has been really housed or siloed at individual offices. DOE doesn't really have a precedent for inter-office collaboration. We're not that good at it. So we're trying to be better, and we've been leading an effort for the past like 8 months where we got all the DOE offices together, not just ERE or renewable power, but including even ARPA-E, to identify the areas of research and hybrid system that are the most important and priority for all of us that can be tackled and have more impact if we're tackling them together rather than siloed. And so those are just some examples of ways that we're trying to coordinate. But I don't know if that answers your question exactly of whether you should come to us. I would say if it's very hydro specific, come to us. Even if it's not, we can try to, you know, reach out to the appropriate points. Yeah.
No, great answer. Great answer. Well, we wait, and maybe folks will address your questions. I propose we move to your questions. I know you had a few questions of us. So if Lucci can go to the next slide, and you know, Mari, you pick whichever one you'd like, of course, and we will do our best to address them.
Yeah, and I'm hoping this is more, you know, you can unmute yourself, you can type it in. But to be honest, one of the reasons that I wanted to come here and talk to you today, and this came out of a conversation that I was having with Jose, where I was venting a little bit because we've noticed decreased participation in our latest solicitations. Our I Am Hydro prize, I was really excited about. I'm excited about the winners. I think we got really solid ideas, but we were expecting somewhere along 80 or 100 applicants to the prize, and we got way less than that. Our NOTA, if you've been following the NOTA, we extended it at the end of, once the papers were due at the end of December, we extended it to February 27th because we were noticing we were not on a great trajectory to have a big applicant pool. And so I wanted to take this chance, and the first question I wanted to ask, you know, I talked about 2 prizes, the 2 solicitations, the groundbreaking hydro prize and the NOTA. And if you can chat, just type in, I want to know how many people actually knew about these 2 before I came in and talked to you today. I'm just trying to gauge if this is about our work not getting out, if this is about the funding amount is not attractive, is technical assistance in itself not attractive, or the topic's not the right ones, or is it really just that we're not reaching the audiences, even though we, you know, we try everything in our hands, like our stakeholder blast, we talk in conferences, etc. So so I guess to summarize, first question, if you'll want to just type in if you did know about the NOTA or the prize, and if anyone has any thoughts on what I just said about, you know, how do we get better participation from the hydropower industry, I would love to hear from you on your thoughts on that too.
Great question.
Hey, Marisol, I might give it a shot, because now I'm putting my hat on the industry side, and I'm working on with some developers, and like you said, on that NOTA, on the 28th of December, that was the concept paper, and then we were surprised to see it extended to February the 17th, I think, or 27th. So just to answer your first question about the NOTA, I noticed that not everybody, most of the people I'm talking to, and it has been a year now since I left the government and labs, it's not as widely known as from the inside. And I talked to I'm not going to name these big organizations. They have no idea that there are these NOTAs. So that's the first one. The second thing is the NOTA is less attractive than the FOAS, because anytime you have a FOAS, you have some amount of money, and then that's more more attractive. You get more participation than NODA, because the NODA is just technical assistance, and then they ask. In my experience, they were asking me how national labs can help us. Are they going to design? Are they going to give us the final product? And I kept telling them, no, it's not. No, the labs are here to support and technical. There is liability. They're not going to give you a final design for construction and so forth. So that's kind of a little bit, it's not as attractive as the money, or these companies need the final design where eventually they are going to engineering firms to do that. So that's what I'm finding out, talking to many companies and writing so many proposals these last year. So the NODA and the FOA are not really hitting the people that needs them outside the research center, outside the academia, because they're looking for money. But if you go and look at hydropower entities and industry, they are not applying for it. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of projects going on as we speak, but nobody's looking at DOE for some technical assistance because they don't even check it. So I can think of something to suggest later on, how to reach out to the hundreds and thousands of groups better than just posting it on DOE website and leaving it there. So this is just my opinion on working on the other side now, and I'm surprised to find out the non-awareness of this. I'm really surprised.
Looks like Deb just opened her camera. Hi, Deb. But you're muted. You're muted right now.
How many times do you think we say that on these virtual meetings? You're on mute. So Marisol, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Great presentation. Just a couple things I can tell you from my point of view. The only reason I knew about NODA was because of other internal people in GE that have worked on it before, specifically in our Global Research Center. I did think NHA, though, did try to have, I thought we had something on it to kind of explain the NODA. So that's one way, but yeah, it's hard to communicate to the mass. So I see the problem. Education, how do you educate them? And also just, so I guess that's sad on that. But one of the things that I wish is that we seem to get these FOAs and all of a sudden it's drop everything and go. And that is really difficult. My wish, my Christmas wish this year was that DOE would put out a calendar of estimated times FOAs might be released and potential topics. That would really be of help to us, just to be able to plan those ahead of time, because we're trying to also do bids and other things, and we want to do a good job, and we participate a lot in programs. So for us, that would be great if we just had more advanced notice, or even calendars that go for several years. And you can always say temporary or tentative, understand that they change, understanding how you get your funding, etc. And then the prize. On the prize, the last couple prizes you guys have had, there's been a bunch of us that wanted to participate, but because of the workload, we just couldn't then, we just don't have the time. It seems like with everybody not traveling, we have more and more meetings and work than we've ever had. So I don't know how those go hand in hand, but they do. But that's my feedback. Thank you.
That's awesome. Super helpful. Thank you. I like the calendar idea.
That's a great point, Deb, and Deb even got an amen. Okay. So, Mari, just in the interest of time, we're probably gonna have to pause here if that's okay with you. You can see some of the comments that are there, from awareness to limited awareness to support to some of the points that have been stated. But on behalf of WIC, Mari, I hope you can stay for the rest of the afternoon with us a little bit. But thank you so much for sharing what I think are topics of a lot of interest. So thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you all, and feel free to follow up via email if you get any thoughts and want to share them.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And I just heard that Mark, our next speaker, had to step out, so Lucci is going to cover for him. But before we do that, I'm going to ask, because he was not here earlier, as I told all of you members I would do. Steve, if you can turn on your camera so everybody can see you. Maybe I can peer pressure him. Maybe not. All right, so I will peer pressure him a little bit. There he goes. Steve, thank you. I know you're on mute, but I told the team here, everybody on here, that you would come sometime today and join us. And I just wanted to publicly thank you on behalf of NHA and WIC for all your time and commitment to not only WIC, but all the things that you do for the industry. And truthfully, without you, efforts like WARP couldn't have happened. So I wanted to personally thank you in front of all these great folks that are listening to today's forum. So thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate that. Glad I could help. So.
We will continue to work together. Thank you. And You're getting some shout outs there on the thing. So thank you, Steve, and I hope you can participate for the rest of the forum. With that, great. Lucci, will you cover for Mark? Mark's with the Department of Energy. Lucci and him coordinated. He had a tight schedule. So Lucci, the floor is yours.
Yep, thank you very much. Mark and I just wanted to quickly plug the Digital Twins, a tool for modern hydropower virtual seminar. It's taking place on Tuesday, February 2nd from 1 to 2, and it is open to the public. So this is not a member-only seminar. So please feel free to join. Within the seminar, you will hear from experts within the DOE, labs, and industry. You will hear about insights within the framework of the digital twin, and they are also really looking for feedback from industry. And we also just wanted to highlight some of the speakers that we have. So Mark Christian will moderate. Alejandro Moreno will speak along with Dr. Hong Wang, Dr. Osman Ahmed, and Akhilesh Pandey, as well as Kirk Hudson. So we just wanted to highlight that, and please join us on Tuesday. Okay, and Jose, I'll pass it over to you.
Great, Lucci, thank you. I'd like to ask Deb, Merce, Gia, Vince, and Paul if they can turn on their cameras. Great, assuming they're working, of course. I appreciate that. So we're now going to switch to the panel discussion, and we've asked these 4 industry reps, industry leaders, different segments to kind of be a part of this. And I have a few questions to kind of get things going post the introductions, but I really would like others to ask any questions of these folks. So first I'd like to introduce Deb. Deb, you can wave. You heard her earlier. Deb is with
I guess I can take my winter coat off. I'm freezing in my office. Sorry. Okay, there.
Deb is the Director of Business Development for GE and has lived, she's worked, she's traveled all over the world for almost 40 years working on all kinds of things power. But of course, most of us, if not all of us, know her for her great leadership in hydro. She's one of the actual founding members of WIC. She is a very prominent board member, and she really focuses also on ensuring and mentorship of women in STEM throughout her career. So Deb, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate having you. Gia, she may be in different places. I can get her to wave. There she is. All right. I've been fortunate to work with Gia for a long time, so I should have this memorized, but we'll read it anyways. Gia is the co-founder and CEO of Natel Energy. She's actually a chemical engineer by training, but has over 20 years experience in the energy industry. She's worked at places like Accenture, Constellation in 2004, Credit Suisse, and she founded with her brother Natel in 2009. Really focusing on the theme of climate change, driving changes in water patterns, focus on the promotion of innovation hydropower solutions. And I know that many of you know Gia, and thank you, Gia, for being here with us. Next, I have Vince. Vince, if you can wave to the crowd. I also met Vince many, many moons ago. He may remember at Waterpower Week when I was back at DOE, and it's always fun to see all the stuff that they're doing and keeping track, because they have one of the coolest toys out there. So I'm sure Vince will talk a little bit about that. But Vince is the founder and CEO of Whoosh Innovation since 2007. Prior to Whoosh, he has been part of many senior management teams and several diverse and successful startup companies. Everything from real estate to, I did not know this, Vince, to actually founding a law firm in '91. In 2002, he actually was with Adobe, and he earned himself an interesting quote, the product guy, and was awarded one of those founders awards. And more recently, he received recognition for Whoosh for its innovation in fish passage, and when it was awarded by the NHA's 2018 OSAW award. So Vince, great to see you again, and thank you for being here with us.
Good to see you.
And last but definitely not least, I also happen to know Paul for quite some time. Paul, great to have you here. Paul is, and I like this, a veteran of public affairs and a marketing specialist for 25 years. Time does fly, Paul, working in the federal government. He is a current lobbyist at SMI, which is a Washington, D.C. based firm, and really focuses on helping clients bring new technologies to market. And Paul also, not only in his spare job, he's also on the MHK Council. So Paul, thank you for representing that as well. Prior to SMI in 2008, he served as a senior staff member for 3 members of Congress, including Senator Robert Byrd, former chairman of the Senate Appropriation Committee. And Paul also was a founding member of NHA's Marine Energy Council in 2015. So thank you, Paul, for being here as well. So if you guys can all unmute, it's only us, and I have a few, like I said, questions that I'll just kind of get us started. And you all were put together with a lot of intent, representing completely different sectors of the industry. But let's just start with kind of a fun question. If you were to take your company hat, even if you represent companies, even if you make products, or a combination of both, what are some of the innovations that you think are key? And I'm going to expand this a little bit for the hydropower and or the marine energy hydrokinetics industry to really continue to cement or create the role in our energy landscape. And I will leave it free for all of who would want to go first. Uh-oh.
Okay, I'll start. I was muted. Sorry, I was talking. I said a whole bunch of good stuff, but you didn't hear. So I'll just start with storage. What a great opportunity we have in this country with storage, all the renewables. I mean, the hydro industry foresaw this, but what's the issue? The cost issue. You're comparing a little battery that is, you can do a bunch of them off the radar screen versus a big capital project. One of the things a couple of years ago we said is if we don't get our costs down and our deliveries down, we targeted 50%. That's where we needed to be in order to be viable. And even though we've made some great strides, we are far from that. So schedule cost really needs to come down. Innovation in geotechnical, which DOE is trying to do through the prizes that they've offered in the past, but still we're a long way. Just to give you an example, pump storage, again, if we stay with storage, 40% of the cost of a pump storage project is civil. Additionally, that's where all the risk is, because you don't know what you got till you start digging. Even the Swiss in their most recent pump storage project had a 1.5 year delay, and they're experts in tunneling due to not analyzing the rock correctly. So I mean, that's what innovation is. That's where we really need to kind of, I think, step it up significantly. And again, thanks DOE for all you do, but keep doing it. And we really need to work on getting our budget up for you in order to tackle some of these things. Thanks.
Thanks, Deb. Any other?
Yeah, I 100% agree with Deb's comments. Well, both on storage and also on the need to drive down civil works costs, not just for pump storage, but also for other forms of new hydro as well. I think Another area for innovation, which is critical, and it ties into the thought process around how do we get more out of our hydropower fleet from an operations perspective, is really the opportunity around taking what's happening with grid edge controls, AI, machine learning, and applying that to tackle the various aspects of what we need to be able to have to hand to operate hydropower projects more effectively, to integrate wind and solar into the grid. And so I just think there's like tremendous opportunity out there. That's an area where I frankly think some of the opportunities that are really interesting are ones that derive from the fact that you don't have that a lot of those things can be there are a number of those things that can be implemented that don't require as much upfront capital cost, where you can do projects that are taking better data, better analytics, better information to then improve operations and revenue. And we have to focus on capital costs. It's an unrelenting part of this industry, but also finding ways to create more using better data analytics and tools is really critical and a big area as well.
Thank you.
I have a couple of things that I could add to that. I totally agree with the data portion of that, and I think that actually ties into an entire watershed. So starting to think about the watershed, not just the dam and the data associated with the dam. And we're coming at it from the environmental perspective, and I think for the industry, to overcome the perceptions, we're always thinking about fish passage, for example, but you have this opportunity also with the non-powered dams to flip the argument entirely. Most of those non-powered dams, which are the vast majority of dams in the country, have no resources, money generation coming off of them that can provide for fish passage, and no legal means to do that, to force that issue. So that's always working against the hydropower industry. But if the hydropower industry owns it and takes that part on, you've actually flipped it. You've said, hey, we're going to solve the problem. We're going to help passage at all these places, at all these dams that have no passage at all today. So I think the non-powered dam opportunities for the hydropower industry, and to really be aggressive about going after that, because you're not building a new dam, but you are adding generation to it. So I think those opportunities for so much of the industry are just waiting, and it can have a very positive effect on the overall perception of the industry in helping the globe reach its clean energy goals.
Vincent, I'm going to want to come back to that. A lot of interesting points you made, but before we do that, Paul, you wear a lot of hats, represent a lot of companies. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks. In addition to everything everyone else has said, I would just add some good old-fashioned just research, development, validation, and deployments. From a marine energy side, the technologies are still, they're not commercialized. So everything that's involved with a deployment is innovation. We've got a couple of companies right now. A company just went through a go, no go last week with DOE and on a deployment. And everything about that, in preparing for that presentation, everything about that system, the major system, is an innovation, and it's a first-time deployment. And so, I'm just trying to create the atmosphere where we can bring the national labs, university research partners, private sector companies, all working in conjunction with the Water Office to get these new technologies deployed. So, I just want to put in a plug for this, the old R&D and validation, because I think that's critical right now around the world on the marine energy side.
Yeah, and it's not only the marine energy side, as you know, the last D demonstration, as an example, is critical, right? A lot of good innovation dies because it doesn't have the opportunity to get demonstrated either at scale or with the right audience, so they can buy down the risk, embrace it. Do you agree? Anything that I'm missing there? Because I know that when I was at DOE, that was a key thing. Of course, as we heard from Madi, typically the most expensive thing to do. and can be crippling for a company, especially a small company. And I know, Gia, you've gone through a lot of growth and doing quite well, but that whole demo piece, I'll start with Paul and maybe then to Gia, but how do we get better at that?
Yeah, I mean, because if you look at marine energy over the last, say, 4 to 5 years, how many deployments have we had in the United States? I mean, I saw Trey's on here, and I wanted to highlight, that's a great example of a partnership with a national lab, innovating on those blades, the composite facility out the Flatirons campus. And, they had the earlier deployments, the blades failed, they learned a lot from that. They made a lot better product, and they just pushed over 100 megawatt hours of power produced in the East River in New York City. We've not had many demonstrations like that in the last 5 years, and we need a bunch more of those. And I'm hoping that we're in a circumstance where the next year or so we're going to do a lot more. But that's, it's money and effort. It's time and focus.
And an appetite for risk, right? Because some of these things, and that's part of research, will not work. Sorry, Paul, great answer. Gia or others, starting with you, Gia, anything you'd like to add, either from the personal journey that you guys have gone through, or just the importance of demonstration with the right audience?
Yeah, I mean, demonstration is critical. At the end of the day, for new, particularly new, for new solutions in general, but particularly when we're talking about new hardware solutions that will then be hardware, or frankly civil engineering solutions that will then be deployed into projects. Deployment at scale won't happen, which means cost out doesn't happen if we can't get demonstrations to the point where you are able to then have project finance mechanisms. And often this is called bankability. If you can't achieve bankability, it's really impossible, frankly, to unlock accelerating scale, and it becomes this kind of positive feedback loop in an unfortunately negative way, where if you can't unlock accelerating deployment scale, you can't do cost out, because the bottom line is that doing things repeatedly is a part of the cost out process. Innovation is really important in bringing down costs, but if you can't actually rinse and repeat and kind of go through that initial process of scale to figure out where can you continue to fine tune, where can you continue to take out, it becomes a real barrier. And so, yeah, deployment's critical. Getting funds for deployment, I think, is critical. I think one of the things that we're going to be increasingly, we've been fortunate to benefit from some amount of deployment support through the Waterpower program. I think finding ways to increase the amount of funding support that can come through the program is really critical, because another question that we have faced is size, because a demonstration that is the demonstrations need to be at a certain size to then translate to bankability, to then unlock deployment scale, to then create a positive feedback loop in a positive way to drive down cost.
Absolutely.
Well
Vince
said.
and Deb, any additions to the importance? Vince, I know you live it. Deb, you live it at a whole different scale on that importance to buy down that risk. Any additional part that you'd like to comment on?
Well, just ditto. Although times, much bigger scale, which is one of the biggest issues. For example, with our dissolved oxygen technology, was a perfect example of that, where we had the technology developed years earlier, but couldn't find anybody to work with us really until Cube, Jose, to deploy. So that's, a major issue, I think, at all levels within hydro.
Yeah, I would just say we all got to recognize that the industry itself is very conservative, and having safety is always a forefront for obvious reasons. But not everything needs to be treated that way. And so we put innovations in our name, and it is with an S on the end of innovations, because it isn't just the technical piece. It's all the business part around it that you're having to innovate on also. And I think that as the industry, we almost need the entrepreneurs that are not just the technical, but the entrepreneurs and on the business side to help get over that, going from that pilot to the commercial pilot to the the scaling. That is tough, and we're finding that at times it's easier to do that outside of this country, which of course for the last year and a half that's been difficult. There really is a pressure, I would say, at this point. We've got to find ways to get this done here and now.
Yeah, and Paul's heard this, and some of you. Nothing was more frustrating for me at DOE when we make all kinds of investment, but I think when we need to take it to the finish line, we can't do it, and it goes overseas. Very frustrating.
Yeah. Very
frustrating. I know that Vladimir is, hopefully everybody can see, he's just putting a few markers for folks that there's a report by multiple labs that is coming out on pump storage. So Vladimir, I'll ask you to highlight that when we do the lab section, but thank you for writing that. Richard, I just want to make sure before we continue here, I saw your mic go live. Did you have a question for the panel? Maybe not. Okay, I just saw it. Again, if anybody wants a question to the panel, I want to make sure we do that. I wanted to peel the onion a little bit more, and Vince, you made a few references here, and I know that I've chatted with most folks either on this call in some way, shape, or form. We always talk about cost. When I look at hydro, when I look at emerging technologies like NHA and others, I also get worried about the time component. How can we get ready quicker to be able to be there when the nation needs us for whatever it may be? If it's variability that we're trying to solve for, or higher penetration of variability between wind and solar, what are those flexible assets? If we're looking at, marine hydrokinetics deployed on our coast, how do we do that in such a way that we work with all the stakeholders, because there are plenty to deal with, right, and so forth. And time has always been my fear when I looked at the water portfolio when I was at DOE, and still today, especially with some of these emerging technologies. I believe in neither of you, Vince, you kind of touched on using of data, maybe becoming a little bit more proactive with our non-power dams, et cetera. Definitely one way to do it. Any thoughts on how do we use innovation to really accelerate our presence, or continued presence for that matter?
Boy, from our standpoint, the amount of energy that is going into pulling all those stakeholders together for a particular project often exceeds what the technology portion of it is, and we'd like to be focusing more on the technology part of it. But you're having to spend a tremendous amount of energy and time there. And so at the same time, we've been involved because of the nature of our stuff. The drive by the industry and NHA over the years here to make things more modular, I think was absolutely the right direction to go. But then we've been in situations where there's emergency, and actually everybody can come together and get things done rather quickly when there's an emergency type situation, and it's fun to be a part of that. But when you're not in that emergency situation, everybody falls back into their normal way of operating. And I think somehow we have to create that, if you don't want to call it an emergency, that urgency that at a different level than is there, and it's got to go out through all the organizations and the stakeholders. That it isn't acceptable, really, that we lost a year here because we didn't get this done in time, because that adds up, and before you know, that's 3, 4, 5 years, and you from the innovator's perspective, that's just a killer. It's so hard to overcome those delays. So that I think you're right on things. It has to be faster, and it's not because the technology can't be developed faster. That's not where the problems are. From my perspective, it's actually being held up, the advancement of the technology, by the inability to deploy at scale or at size, either way you want to look at it, and it's both ways. And
but we do have to have that sense of urgency, all of us, right? I think that's key. Any other comments, Deb, Gia, or Paul, on that time component or things that you worry about as an industry leader?
Can I make a quick plug?
Yes.
So NHA is having their conference in October of this year, and in the center of the conference, will be an innovation powerhouse, which will kind of carry on the theme that we've been talking about. It's going to be a showcase or a place to be able to showcase innovation, cutting edge, not necessarily hydro, but beyond. For example, perhaps additive manufacturing. DOE's, Southern and GE have kind of worked on this together to really show innovation, outward thinking, to show that we are just as good at innovation as all the other renewables, and to try to use that to pull in universities, et cetera. So just kind of heads up, we're really, really excited about it.
Great, thanks, Deb.
I maybe just add one additional area, and I think it was touched on earlier by a few of the other comments, but I think it's an important thing for us to pay attention to as an industry, which is the broader picture, kind of as Deb was a little bit of alluding to, but in not necessarily on the underlying technical perspective, but from the opportunity to think about hydro innovatively in the context of water change. At the end of the day, or one thing that we're definitely seeing is a lot of change in our water patterns. And that has impact for water infrastructure writ large. Hydropower, obviously, being a core part of water infrastructure. But when you think about opportunities around the non-power dams and what a change, increases in extreme precipitation events, changes in flood patterns, changes in flood levels, increasing frequency of what we previously thought were 10 or 100-year floods. So 100-year floods becoming 10-year floods, for example. These are all challenges that we are going to face broadly as a society that are going to have a big impact on what we need to spend on water infrastructure. And I think there's a major opportunity for hydropower to play a role in addressing that and being a part of the solution. It's part of hydropower's past. Hydropower projects in general often are multi-benefit projects. And so thinking there's, again, I think a big role for innovation to play in that transition as a result of climate change. And that is a unique thing to hydro that is different from wind and solar or from other renewables. And again, because I think it's important to both, it adds another dimension basically to why it's important to invest in hydropower solutions that are also able to help us meet some of the challenges we're going to face from just a water management and water supply perspective.
Absolutely. And just for those not reading the notes, Jay Anders, the NHA board chair, just posted the link to the event that Deb was alluding to. Paul, anything you want to add to that before I ask the last question for the panel?
Yeah, the thing that keeps me up the night most at night, and you won't be surprised because it's the same thing since you were running the shop, was just how much money we're getting for the program. And so, I applauded Deb earlier when she said we need to do more. And, it's nice to see that rising number back from 08 when it was, 0 and 07, and we got up to 150 million now. But, I look at the solar office and, $280 million, and no discredit to it. I'm a huge solar fan. I think we should have panels on every rooftop. But, $280 million R&D budget. They have now deployed 89 gigawatts of solar capacity in the United States, up from 1 gigawatt 11 years ago. And they got, $2.5 billion from the, is it the ITC? The ITC, and to subsidize those deployments, right?
Oh, more than that, I think the ITC.
That's just 1 year. That was 1 year. Yeah, that was 1 year subsidy, right? And so, my point is, here we are, a non-commercialized industry on the marine energy side, and we're desperate for deployments of just original devices, and you're up against that. And so you're never going to be competitive if you can't even get in the water. So that's really what stresses me out. I tell people I won't be successful until I can get the water office being funded at an equivalent level of the solar office. Hopefully we will have switched positions at that point, but anyway.
Well, you are on the right trend, and incredibly good point, and I know that you fight that daily. So thank you, Paul. So last request, and I'm going to form it in a question for all you 4 leaders in all your various hats. My assumption is that you guys are going to help us continue to populate WARP more, right, Paul? So bring the MHK industry and others. So please help us with that. That's a plug that I think that your leadership would help a lot. And so the last question is, anything that you as leaders would want WIC to do more to help either you on your day job or the industry as a whole? And I'll start with Deb.
Well, I think what you're doing is great. One of the biggest issues, well, as a matter of fact, when I started WIC, I said, what's the biggest issue of the industry? I think we had, I don't know, 40 of the industry leaders in a conference room. And you know what it was? The number one issue was education, which I'm thinking that's really not an R&D, but they just said it's such a major issue. So one of the things that you're doing is making people more aware and bringing in a bigger audience. Our problem has always been we do a great job of talking to ourselves, but not outside of ourselves. So I noticed that you guys are doing this to people above and beyond NHA, and maybe we should think of doing more of that to expand ourselves. So great job on this, by the way, too, Jose.
Thank you, Deb. Continue on the ladies first. Gia, any parting WIC requests or anything else you'd like to say for the good of the order?
I think that so actually I think one point I agreed very much so with Deb's earlier point about having a schedule of funding opportunities or grants, like, or some indicative schedule, and that might be something potentially where WIC could work with the Waterpower Program Office to at least provide some additional visibility, if just as an alternate means. So that's a very tactical point, but I totally agree. More getting a little bit more visibility would help, and getting that visibility out to the broader community focused on innovation, certainly should help.
Great, thank you.
And more time to respond.
And can I key off of that? Because, not only the schedule, but also the topics. And, I think, oftentimes from a DOE perspective, Jose, and you can address this, I think they feel like they got to come up with something new that, every year to be able to get it approved, instead of just saying, hey, we've got a great thing right here. Let's just every year repeat this opportunity and allow people to come back and apply to that. And, I think that's where you all could do a lot of work and just helping them think through where they need to go. If they're going to do a prize, what's the focus of the prize? Don't just come up with it on their own, right?
Yep, good point. And last but not least, Vince.
I want to agree very much with what Deb was saying on the awareness and education part, and then take that and say, I think there's been some effort this way. I think we got to just really accelerate it, both reaching out to the other renewables, wind and solar, for their expertise in, I would say, business innovation, the way that they've approached the market to scale things, and to bring more of that into this industry. And I think these recent outreaches with the environmental community are going to pay big dividends. We have been in this unique position of really trying to support hydro in the bigger picture of the clean energy side of things. I think that message is getting across slowly to the NGOs and the tribes and so forth as well. And it's just it can really help get the ball going, because I think if you get the public pushing for these things, we're all not having to do so much work, because I think it is an awareness thing. I really, and it's got to be focused outreach to reach everybody. And Natel's doing that certainly on their websites too and so forth. But it's got to come from not just the innovative new companies. It's got to come from the big guys. It's got to come from the operators of the facilities and so forth. And it's got to come from the big dam owner operators too. And I'm talking about the Army Corps and USVR and stuff. So. Yep.
Thank you, Vince, and thank you, Deb and Gia and Paul, for a very informative chat that we had. Most of you know me that I'm a stickler to Agenda 245. We are spot on, but thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. We're still going to have one more quick, what I would call almost like a speed dating open mic session with our labs. So if I can ask our lab, and thank you all again, if I can ask our lab representatives on the call, the webinar, to turn on their cameras. I haven't seen Al in a while. Hi, Al. Thomas, Brian. Hi, Brian. I believe that Johnny is for Oak Ridge, right? Nice to see you, Debjani. And do we have anybody? Vladimir was here earlier. Is he still around? Doesn't look like it. Great. So if our labs can turn on their mics, sorry. And a little bit, a little bit quicker. My motivation is a lot of folks don't get to see your faces all the time, may not know a lot about the lab that you represent. They hear it in an acronym form. So if you could just very quickly you say who you are and the lab that you represent, where you're located, because I think that's another thing that people don't know that much of, even though we have an internet. And what do you do for the Waterpower program? If we can do this really quickly, I would appreciate it. And ladies first, Johnny.
Okay, hello everybody. I am Debjani Singh from Oak Ridge National Laboratory. It is in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, as most of you will be aware of. And I lead the data science part of Hydropower, and I presented a webinar to many of you yesterday on how much data we have about hydropower at Oak Ridge National Lab, and it's on a platform called as HydroSource, and it's hydrosource.ornl.gov. So if you have a chance, please go look at it. Other than HydroSource, we have a multitude of projects related to water power funded by WPTO at ORNL. And please feel free to reach out to Brennan Smith, our lab relationship manager, or to me for more details on many of our projects. And we look forward to industry collaborations on most of our projects.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Debjani. And great presentation yesterday. Al, good to see you. Can you talk a little bit about NREL?
Yep. Hello. Thank you for the opportunity. Al Levecki, the program manager for Waterpower at NREL, and we are in Colorado, the Front Range. And in our portfolio is both hydropower and pump storage and marine energy. And I also in my role get to be a liaison kind of across the lab and a lot of hybrid energy system work, energy, water, storage work. So I'm really happy to be a liaison to the lab for anybody in this sector. And we strive to keep our website up to date, but I'm sure it always lags and it's never quite the detail that we'd like. So I'd love to engage and answer questions and help direct you either internally or externally where expertise might be helpful to the challenges that you have. So yeah, let me know and I'll put my email as well in the chat. So beyond letting us know how we could help, I would echo the data point, and thinking about ways. I mean, the expertise from this group and beyond on the technical advisory boards is amazing and invaluable input. But it'd be great to reflect on kind of the data needed to accomplish all these value stories and all these opportunities that we're trying to identify, and think about ways for sharing data that may be tucked away in different places, and if we can creatively, I think, pool all of our data, we could really have some faster more robust impact. So yeah. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Great to see you. Brian, great to see you. Could you do the same?
Yeah, everybody, hi, my name is Brian Belgraf. I'm standing in today for TJ Heibel, who's our formal lab research manager, but really it's an effort by several of us. Myself, I've been working in hydropower for 20 related years, 20 or more years, kind of more on the environmental side, but also just on the innovation side. Kind of what do we need to do to adapt hydropower for the future? And I do a lot of drawing from a lot of other research areas within PNNL and the other national labs, from nuclear energy, solar, wind, other renewable energies, and basic sciences like material science and cybersecurity. How can we integrate the technologies that are coming out of those other areas of technology innovation and integrate those into hydropower to improve hydropower overall? So that's the gist of me. I'll put my email in the chat here. And again, I have an open door policy. Anybody's welcome to contact me or TJ Heibel or Allison Colatella. We all work a lot with the Waterpower Technologies office at DOE. And yeah, just happy to chat with anybody.
Thank you, Brian. And last but not least, Thomas.
Hey everyone, Thomas Mosier from Idaho National Lab. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, yes.
Okay. As Deb asked or said earlier, another frequent question on these meetings. So, okay, so I'm at Idaho National Lab. We're located in Idaho Falls, eastern Idaho. So we have skiing on the brain right now. But we do work across the hydropower portfolio, and as others have mentioned, you know, it's not just about hydropower in a silo. It's about connecting the different resources of the labs together to, you know, to think about innovative energy systems and hydropower's role in the evolving grid. So, you know, a couple of highlights within the hydropower portfolio. We work on hybridization of hydropower plants with energy storage devices, look into the value propositions of increased flexibility. We also work on the water side. For example, there's a project I lead on irrigation system modernization. How do we as DOE help innovation and accelerate reinvestment in irrigation systems for both power and non-power benefits? And, you know, and as mentioned, harness the capabilities from other technologies, you know, other sectors, cybersecurity, et cetera, to answer new questions.
Great, thank you. And for the audience, you know, one of the big motivations, and not a lot of time, I do have one question for the labs to answer as a group, but, you know, was really to put faces of them to all of you and their contact information so you understand how to potentially seek information or clarity. So as researchers or lab POCs for the Waterpower program, what are the things that the lab researchers could use the most from industry to make your research portfolio, which eventually makes our industry better, right? What is it? What are those things that you need? We all talk about data, but just generically, can we talk a little bit about that really quick? And I'll go in reverse order. Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, you know, fundamentally, like what I see as being exciting, one of the exciting things about the national labs anyway is kind of being at the intersection between, you know, academia, which is like just focused on research, and industry, which is focused on deployment, right? So helping to bridge that gap and see our research get used in the real world is what gives much of our work meaning. So you know, what that means in practice is hearing the statement of industry need, right? That's pretty basic, but hearing from industry, hey, I've got this problem, you know, what do you think? How can we solve this together? That's you know, that's the kind of the most basic element of it. So, you know, from there, depending on the type of innovation that's required, you know, Marisol gave a great overview of the different funding mechanisms. We might team up together and go after one of those funding mechanisms to put that innovation to practice.
Great. Brian. Sorry, Brian, I didn't see you drinking. You were next to my list.
Oh, you're good. I think I just second, you know, what Thomas says. Having industry approach us, you know, if there's a challenge that they see coming up that isn't being solved, so that we can, you know, look across all of the different technology. I mean, the national lab system is doing some amazing things. I learn something new every day, many new things every day. So linking the industry needs to those other emerging technologies is where I think industry could help us the most. I mean, responding to RFIs, which was mentioned earlier today, is really helpful too, so we can get a pulse on what is happening, what the big challenges are. And you know, we talked about it a little bit too, about the hydropower industry being, you know, relatively conservative. And you know, it'd be nice if I could just say we could take more risks It'd be nice to be able to do that somehow, but you know, to be able to test out new ideas to help us innovate our industry for the future.
Thank you. Al.
Yeah, it's a good question, and you know, I will definitely take this back to my team and explore it further. You know, as far as the what types of data, or are there any key challenges that we're really missing data around that would really help move the ball, right? You know, in the absence of you know, solid data, assumptions are made. Sometimes, you know, differently across the board. So, you know, I don't know, you know, maybe I guess it's really an ask to the sector, and
Well,
you know,
and also, Al, think of WIC as a portal, right? So if there are data gaps or there are data things, we can do it, and that's really a service that I think we haven't done as good of a job as we could be doing.
Yeah, that would be phenomenal. So like figuring out, you know, key areas where there are those gaps and then leveraging this forum. I think that's great.
Okay. And last but not least, Johnny.
Sure, Jose. So I do second Thomas and Brian's thoughts, you know, like to the T. And I want to add that other than sharing your thoughts, like industry leaders sharing your needs with us, we would also appreciate advisory, you know, as Marisol pointed out, reviewers or advisory or advisors from the industry on our research. Like sometimes we start off with some, you know, like groundbreaking thoughts and research, and we would want to know if that is, you know, like useful for the industry, or are we progressing in the right direction to be useful for the industry. So I'll give you a big example is the HydroSource platform that we shared with everyone. So, you know, like we would want it to be used, but we would also need feedback on how is it useful for the industry and how can we make it useful for the industry. So, you know, it's a two-way traffic kind of, and so your WARP platform is a very good opportunity for us to engage with each other so that we can put in our research and, you know, like get feedback from the industry and from the forum.
Great, thank you. And I know we're running out of time, but I didn't want to cut you short. So if you can just put the next slide, which is our upcoming events. These are just plugs. I'll leave this here. I want to thank all of you for participating, all the speakers. Thank you for being here. Really, Jay, I wanted to thank you as our chair of giving me the opportunity to lead WIC. And with this, I pass on the baton to Megan and Bo to lead the efforts moving forward. But I want to thank all of you for participating. Thank you.
Well, Jose, on behalf of the industry, Jose, we want to thank you too. You know, really appreciate all your efforts this year and look at what Megan and Bo do us in the future. So thank you so much, Jose, for your great leadership this past year.
Thank you, Jay. Megan, it is all yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you to you and Steve for all your hard work. We have, Bo and I have very large shoes to fill, so thank you.
You will do great. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Steve. It's wonderful working with you, and I very much look forward to working with Megan and Bo. Thank you, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Lucy.